I'm going to do an incredibly rare thing on Secular Talk. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever done this before. Maybe once or twice I've done this before, but I'm going to give credit to CNN. A segment here on CNN. This is Jake Tapper, surprisingly, doing real journalism and covering a very real issue.
In our world lead, 400,000 children, 400,000 are at risk of dying right now in Yemen as its 6-year civil war rages on. 400,000, according to the United Nations World Food Program, whose chief tweeted this urgent plea today.
We need this war to end, and we need support financially, food, nutrition, medical supplies, and we need it now.
And now a heartbreaking new CNN investigation shows just how dire the situation really is on the ground. The Biden administration says it wants to bring an end to the war, which was partially funded by American tax dollars, by no longer backing the Saudi-led coalition, which has been fighting Iranian-backed Houthis. U.S. backing of the war started under Obama and escalated under Trump. Now, CNN's investigation finds it's been more than 2 months since the U.S.-backed Saudi blockade has allowed tankers packed with the necessary fuel for food and supplies to reach starving Yemenis, to dock at the crucial port of Hodeidah, which is controlled by the Houthis. And 14 tankers scheduled to dock there are currently being held off the Saudi coast, according to a vessel tracking app, all which goes against a United Nations agreement. CNN's Nima Elbagir made a very dangerous trip on a small boat to get inside Houthi territory in northern Yemen, a place few foreign journalists have ever been, in order to show the world, in order to show you what it's really like for innocent parents and children. And we want to warn you, some of these images will be tough to watch.
The derelict coastline of the north of Yemen. Rusting hulks tell a story of war, blockade, and devastation. For years now, the Houthi-controlled north has been increasingly isolated from the outside world. We secretly traveled through the night by boat after our previous reporting here led the government to deny us entry. On the road to Hodeidah port, we get a sense of the humanitarian disaster kept from the outside world. Along the roadside, hundreds of stalled food supply trucks with no fuel to move. In a country in the grip of hunger, their cargo stands spoiling in the hot sun. The port of Hodeidah is the supply gateway for the rest of the country. It should be bustling with activity, but today it is eerily empty. A result of the US-backed Saudi blockade. The last tanker to dock here was in December. In the echoing silence, it dawns on us. We are about to witness the terrible impact of this blockade. Desperate patients and family members trying to get the attention of Dr. Khalid, chairman of Hodeidah's hospital. If he signs these papers, they get some financial relief for their treatments and medicines. He doesn't get far before he is stopped again and again. Since the Yemen war started 6 years ago, families have been in financial freefall. The fuel blockade has sped that descent into oblivion. This is the main hospital for Hodeidah province, and we're surrounded by doctors and nurses rushed off their feet.
This is a garden, our garden.
Is this a normal day? Is this busy all the time?
Not the business day.
This is not a busy day?
This is a normal day.
Wow.
Dr. Khalid wants to show us some of his critical patients in the therapeutic feeding center. A 10-year-old girl whose growth has been so stunted by starvation, she can no longer stand.
Dr. Khalid says every hour of every day they are receiving more and more cases of severe malnutrition that are this advanced because the parents can't afford to feed their children. They also can't afford to bring them to the hospital to treat them.
The UN says pockets of Yemen are in famine-like conditions, but it says Hodeidah is not considered one of them because it doesn't meet the metrics to declare famine. But Dr. Khalid thinks the reality on the ground has outpaced the UN's projections. The Saudi fuel blockade is biting. Malnutrition numbers are spiking, and at the same time, this busy hospital is running out of the vital fuel that keeps its generators running, which means that babies like Maryam, who doctors say at 2 months weighs the same as a newborn, would die.
All of that is preventable. I'll go further. All of that is easily preventable. All it would take is Washington, D.C., the Biden administration, top officials in our government, to say, Saudi, stop it. If you don't stop it, we're going to sanction you, we're going to kick you off the UN Human Rights Council, and we're going to stop all business relations. Now, obviously, there's the petrodollar, and we're in bed with them, and they're our allies, so we look the other way, and we support them with what they do. But if we actually were led by a concern for human rights and justice, we would do something to quell this from happening. Because it's unacceptable. 400,000 kids at risk of dying. There's an embargo. There's a subsequent famine. So people are starving. People aren't getting the medicines that they need. And there's also a vicious bombing campaign. It's U.S. and Saudi bombs killing civilians. By the way, the other thing is, we arm Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia in turn arms Sunni militias on the ground fighting in Yemen. You know who those militias are? Al-Qaeda. Sunni extremist militias, it's Al-Qaeda. So they're fighting the Houthis on the ground. Listen, the backstory is a little complicated, but you had a Sunni government, and the Sunni government was overthrown by the Shia Houthis, and so Saudi Arabia wants the Sunni government back in power, their ally back in power, and so they've been waging a vicious 4-year war and bombing campaign. And it's unacceptable. By the way, there's been stories of bombs hitting schools, hitting markets, killing civilians, and then you could see the remains of the bombs. They're American-made bombs. And so, of course, this is breeding resentment in Yemen against Americans because our bombs are killing them. Biden said, we're going to stop, helping Saudi Arabia with their illegal bombing campaign. But then we found out soon thereafter, they were like, we only meant we're going to stop with the offensive bombing. We're still going to help them with the bombing if it's defensive. Okay, well, the big loophole is they could just declare anything defensive and then bomb. And Biden will probably go right along with it. See, it's the dishonesty that drives me crazy. It's the dishonesty from the Biden administration where they act like, no, we're going to care about human rights, and then they don't at all. And then they continue the same policies that existed under Trump. That's exactly what's happening here. That's exactly what's happening in Venezuela. Iran. They're continuing the Trump policies as they pretend like we're the ones who are serious adults who care about human rights. Nonsense. Nonsense. They could stop this blockade, this embargo, tomorrow, today, if they wanted to. Joe Biden just had to pick up the phone and demand it. You want to know why? We have the most powerful military in the world, and they're our ally. What we say they do, they do. They might not like it. I don't give a fuck if they don't like it. I don't care if they don't like it. Instead, what did Biden do? He released a report that said MBS was responsible for the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist, and then he didn't do anything about it. No sanctions, no nothing. And then he showed his loyalty to Saudi Arabia by bombing some of the targets that they wanted bombed in Syria. So this is an unholy alliance that we have going on here. And listen, I hate to be so direct about it, but it's true. Joe Biden and the U.S. government, and Trump before him, and Obama before him, I think this was going on even at the end of Obama's time in office, they are actively promoting and facilitating a genocide. A genocide. When there's a blockade and an embargo, and there's a famine, and kids are dying, and you're bombing civilians nonstop, and we're at best sitting by and allowing it to happen, at worst actively participating in it, that's unacceptable. This is illegal under U.S. law and international law, violation of the Nuremberg Tribunal and the Geneva Convention, and we don't care. We don't care. It's pathetic. It's unacceptable. It's criminal. And credit to CNN and Jake Tapper for covering this. This is real journalism covering real issues, and everybody needs to know about this. By the way, this is what your tax dollars are going towards. This is what it's going towards. Your tax dollars are going to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is carrying out a genocide. We can't just sit by and watch this happen. This is unacceptable. I know Americans like to think by definition, we're the good guys. We're on the right side of every fight. On this one, we are objectively on the wrong side of the fight. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And any kind of whining or crying about human rights situations elsewhere, comes across, it rings incredibly hollow when you know that we're partaking in a humanitarian crisis and we're actively on the wrong side. We're helping facilitate a genocide. So when we say anything about human rights anywhere else, people laugh at us. It's because of stuff like this. This needs to stop, and this needs to stop now.